Welcome back to another episode of Bros and Birdies, the golf podcast. Yes, I have Liverpool top on. You'll never walk alone, all you big Liverpool fans out there. Graham is called Lee Cooper today, not Graham. So, how are you, mate?
I'm very good. Fresh off the back of another win with Xander Schauffele last week. Bang, bang, Scotland. Here it goes. I'm on for the hat trick this week.
And you know what? I think the other one, Barracuda, Nick Dunlap, was gettable. I think you could have easily picked Nick
I
Dunlap.
know.
Never really got into the Barracuda. It's stable for competition, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on, maybe when I do my picks for the 3M. So that's what we've got. We're going to do an Open Championship review, and then we'll look at the tournaments this week. We've got Live United Kingdom at JCB. And then you've got the Senior Open, and you've got the 3M over at TPC Twin Cities, Blaine, Minnesota. So, right, let's start last week, shall we? The 152nd Open Championship was an X-rated affair as the in-form and super consistent Xander Schauffele was crowned the champion golfer of the year. Always an odd thing to say when you say that in July, Graham. It's a bit weird, but with plenty of golf to play, who can disagree after he takes two of the season's four majors, completing, unfortunately, a clean sweep for the American golfers. How was it for you, mate? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, it was just fabulous. It was superb viewing. I was gripped to the TV for the whole weekend. Obviously disappointed the family because of it. But yeah, it was just, in fact, Saturday, I didn't see an awful lot Saturday. Why? Because I was playing bowls again. But when I finished playing bowls, I got a message from you, and that message read, Shane Lowry could be 10 clear by the end of today. And I was super excited. I was going, Shane Lowry, 10 clear, what's going on? Anyway, I checked the scores, and he was like five under, six under, something like that. It's only one ahead. And I'm thinking, like, what is he talking about? It was obviously a message from earlier on in the day, the conditions, etc., etc. But yeah, he had a right blowout on the Saturday, didn't he? He
Well,
really did.
a blowout in many ways, and I think a bit of a head case, some of the comments he made, and we're going to talk about the comments of, say, Lowry and Hatton a little bit later on. But overall, it was a spectacle, and it was all to do with the weather. We always knew it would be, right? So links golf courses, with the distance that these guys have got and the numbers they're hitting, the weather is pretty much the predominant protection for any links course, right? You need it
Oh
at
yeah,
St. Andrews. And that was the case. And we got it for 3 days, right? And we saw that and it was
yeah.
reflected in the scores. You know, later on, I say we probably got it for 3.25 days because the other 3/4 a day, it suddenly became a little bit easier. The back nine was playing a lot easier. And we'll talk about some of the whole averages a little bit later on. But yeah, I just loved it. I loved every single minute of it. And that is why it is the best major of the season.
It absolutely is. I still can't get over. We've got people posting on social media calling it the British Open. I mean, when are these guys ever going to learn? Really?
Well,
And in all fairness, it's coming from a lot of Americans because they just call it the British Open. It's just it's a force of habit, but it isn't. But I
you've
agree
got a
with you.
major
It's
problem with the fact that if you look back at some of the old videos, there is one video where there's a presentation and the guy that's presenting the trophy, the claret jug, does call it the British Open. And I think that's what a lot of people are holding on to, saying it used to be called the British, now it's being called the Open Championship. Well, I guess you can call it both, but the proper way to call it is the Open, the founding father of open golf, right? So let's just clear that away. Some people are going to talk crap for the rest of their lives. You ain't going to change it. I ain't going to change it. So let him get on with it. But you're right, it's mainly Americans. But come on, they call the bottom the fanny. No wonder they're in the shit all the time.
I'll tell you what, for a moment, I thought I was talking to fucking David Blunkett there. You kept on looking up to the sky, and I'm thinking, what's going on? It's a little bit David Blunkett looking like, but yeah, anyway.
Hey, I just
No.
like to say, Graham, do you know my poetry teacher, right? My
Oh,
poetry
yeah, yeah.
said to me, I will never, ever make it because of my dyslexia, right? I'd like to prove him wrong. I made this the other day, right? Thank you. Right.
You're absolutely off your tits. You really are. I'd say.
I,
Anyway,
I,
no,
I could be because
yeah, you could be. Oh, you haven't got. Oh, you're drinking this.
La Goudal today, 7.2. And also a shout out.
7.2?
Grip Caddy. I hope you've all
Grip
got
Caddy.
yours.
Jurgen, how you
not
doing?
Jurgen
You're right.
Anyway, go on, carry on. Just while I get everyone this. I'm just going to show them how to use it.
It was brilliant. And the weather did play a huge factor in this tournament. But having said that, when you look back at the scores of Xander Schauffele, it didn't impact him at all. I have no idea what you're absolutely doing, but yeah, it was a phenomenal performance from Xander. His worst round was round 2, 72 in the second round, but all sub 70 for the other 3 rounds. And he was just outstanding. I mean, the calmness personified, I think, is probably one way you can call it for Xander. He just, whilst he said he was nervous, that some of that golf that he was playing on that Sunday, and certainly, to be bogey free last round and almost look like you're strolling down that back 9 when you're in the heat of the battle.
Yeah,
that guy is at the top of his game right now. 2 majors, as you say. And we've been waiting for this for such a long time from someone like Xander Schauffele with the talent that he has. And he's been an underachiever, hasn't he, for many years, I would say. Yes, he's won PGA Tour events, but 2 majors in 1 year really propels him right up that ladder. And it was just a superb performance. A lot of stories, though. It wasn't just about Xander Schauffele. Justin Rose having to qualify as well and putting himself in the heat of battle. Young Matty Dodberry, as we talked about last week, great opening round, 72, 1 over, thinking, this lad's going to make the cut and it's going to be absolutely brilliant. And it was hard for him on the Friday.
Brutal. It's hard for everybody.
Brutal. Yeah. I mean, but it didn't look like he was playing particularly bad golf. I think some of his drives just got in the wrong place. He found a few bunkers as well, and it's just and then follows up that 72 with an 80, which just shows you how tough not just major golf but major links golf is. And let's not forget, he beat the score of the likes of Tiger Woods, others out there, Rory McIlroy. He's scored better. Cam Smith, these are big astronomical names in the world of golf, and he scored better than over 2 rounds.
But he also played with Daniel Brown. Big shout out to Daniel Brown. The guy could not miss with the flat stick on Thursday. He was holing everything. I mean, he topped the leaderboard in shots gained putting for the whole week. And that was all based on his first, couple of rounds, if you like. So when you're playing against a player like that, everything's going in. A lot of the putts weren't sinking for Matty. And he'll probably admit that himself, that, he wasn't putting great. But his all-round ball striking looked like it was fantastic. From what we saw, although it was quite frustrating that you could see Matty, Daniel Brown and Borin Sabub, or whatever his name was, play their
no
shots.
Coverage.
And not for a young English amateur. But anyway, it is. They've got a lot of people to cover. But yeah, Billy Horschel, let's name him. What a great guy. Love Billy Horschel. Like one of my favorite golfers ever in the history of golf. Love them, guy. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to get a tattoo with Billy Horschel just on me.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
I'm a Billy fan.
What, an X?
Up the irons, right? That's it. I'm taking this up now. Swap it with a West Ham top. But going back to, let's look at the holes, right? I want to discuss a few things with you because we've got a lot to get through and want to keep it nice and short and snappy, right? So we talked about our favourite holes last week being 11 and 8 for me, which we love. But before we come to you, let's have a look at the figures about those 2 holes, right? The postage stamp, proof that holes don't need to be long and difficult. Okay, we've got that. Flick of the wedge, you're on the dance floor, swirling around, wind swirling around, pop bunkers. Oh, my hands are swirling around. But over the course of the championship, 86 birdies on the 8th hole, 266 pars, 81 bogeys and 36 double bogeys or worse, and played over par for all 4 days, the worst round being round 1, 3.28. There were loads of scores, right? The 11th was obviously the hardest hole come Sunday, but played a lot easier with the wind helping in the early week. In fact, the 10th was the hardest hole in round 4 with that wind coming off the left, off the coast, to prove how the wind affected Troon during the week. I mean, the 10th, when played with the wind, behind was only the 11th hardest. So it went from the 11th hardest to the hardest hole. And that is just the switching of the wind. It's just unbelievable how that can affect it. But any interesting hole information from you? And let's keep it clean for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep it clean. I just want to say, we talked about the postage stamp, that you've given out some of those numbers there. And to think that, 36 holes of double bogey or worse, there were 6 holes that were played that were triple bogey or worse. But let's make it big. Xander Schauffele birdied that hole 3 of the 4 times he played it last week. And that is absolutely outstanding. Yeah. But you're absolutely right, is that, the wind conditions and the change. They were playing in totally different wind conditions with wind behind to what the tournament started out with. And you can't practice for that. You just can't. So that really blew a lot of players out the water, and it became a real test, a war of attrition for a lot of players from day one. But yeah, in terms, the back nine in particular, we talked about it last week, that we thought that, from past records and from what we were hearing, is that those holes 1 through 6, 1 through 7 were going to be absolutely obliterated by a lot of players. And it was totally the opposite. It really was. And that back nine played really brutal. I mean, 17, here's an interesting number. 17. It's what, 240 yards, par 3, long par 3. And on that hole, there wasn't one player that scored a triple bogey or worse on that hole. There was 9 players that shot double bogey or worse. But I would have thought the numbers would have been an awful lot worse. And I did come up with some numbers, as you know. I like my stats, and I just wanted to give out a few here. So there were 53 players in the field that made triple bogey or worse on at least one hole. Of the 8,424 holes that were played last week, 62% of them were parred, 21% of them were bogeyed. Right? That is absolutely phenomenal. If you think par or bogey, 83% of holes played, that shows you really how tough it was last week. A call out for Wacko Neiman. He made an 8 in round 2, I think, at the
big snowman
postage stamp. Austin Eckroat also made a 7 in the final round. And spare a thought for Iwasaki, who made 2 9s at the 13th and 14th holes.
He nearly called the police.
On a way to a 91. A 91, seriously, I could have beaten that. But no, there's just a few points, really, in terms of stats and numbers. You could look at it all day long, and it was just absolutely brilliant.
Well, let's not do that. Let's not look at it all day long. But the club choice was interesting. You talk about the early holes. Now, I was disappointed in some of the club choices. Now, if you look at Tristan Lawrence in the final round, he pulled his driver on nearly every single possible hole, right? He was attacking that. And I put a tweet out and said, if you were 6 shots behind, what would you be taking? And the majority of people did say they would take a driver or 3 wood. But you were seeing players taking a 3-iron and a 4-iron and still finding the rough. I mean, you may as well be further down and be, not as bad as JT, who hit it onto the beach and well out of bounds, one of the worst shots you've ever seen in Open history. I mean, probably just as bad as my tee shots on the first at St Andrews, even though I stayed in bounds. But I was disappointed. I thought a lot more players would have taken. Now you look at 16. Bryson drove it over the burn when the wind was behind, but still players were taking 3 and 4 irons like Tiger Woods and running it into the burn at 311. I mean, that is just
did it.
But that's just Well, we'll get on to Tyrrell Hatton and Lowry in a minute, but it's just poor decision making. And I think if a lot more people, whenever you saw them take a driver off the first and the second tee, even if they're in the rough, they were still only flicking a 54 or 56 into the green, right? The further up there, I just found it a bit strange. Really. There was some really strange, like Bobby Mack in the final round took an iron off the tee on one of the longer holes, didn't reach the fairway, and then was taking a hybrid for his second, and he was just in trouble right from the start. I know his driver he was struggling with it, all day and round 3 as well. But there was just some strange decisions, right? So let's get on to Lowry and Hatton. Their decision to bemoan the setup, especially Lowry saying, "I can't believe they didn't bring some teas up on Saturday." And well, you weren't complaining about that, Shane, when you got the better part of the draw in round 1 and round 2. And I cannot stand it when players, professional golfers, there's 150 starting a tournament. You all know what the situation's going to be. At the start of the day, you know what the tees are going to be, or where they're going to be, and how long the hole is playing, when it's been playing into wind. Okay, we're sorry that the prevailing wind, the usual wind at Troon, didn't happen for most of your week, right? Everyone apologise for that, Shane. But don't spit your dummy out, for God's sake. You're still competing for a tournament. And you're saying, oh, yeah, but we should have had tees forward for us so we could make the holes more reachable. And in Hatton's case, we want to be reaching par 5s in 2. Well, piss off, Hatton, for God's sake. Par 5s are made to be three-shot holes, right? That's the usual design for a par 5. Sometimes
they were played that way last week a lot, yeah.
Well, you could have reached 16 with an iron. Just because you're taking an iron, right? Doesn't matter. Just take an iron and then take a hybrid or a long iron in for your second and try and reach the green in 2. It was just ridiculous. They don't need to moan like that. I mean, McIlroy spat his dummy out after 8 and then pretty much said, well, it's game over, isn't it? It is what it is.
I was thinking about holiday. I'm off on my holiday. It's like, yeah, listen, everybody would love to go on holidays, but you're right in the middle of a golf tournament. You've got to have respect for your playing partners. You've got to have respect for the fans that have turned up to watch you. And McIlroy didn't have that respect by the comments that he came out with. Now, you just called out Lowry, Hatton, McIlroy. They seem to be at the moment the big 3 players. I'll add John Rahm into that a little bit as well, because he does quite a bit of it himself. These big egos, these almost prima donna type figures in the golf world that I honestly don't know what they have to gain from this whinging and moaning. Like you say, there are 150 players in the field. They've all got to play the same course. Okay, yes, there might have been slightly changing wind conditions, but you get that at golf courses. We've talked about that in abundance on previous podcast editions, and we will continue to going forwards. It's just the lie of the land. You've got to suck it up and get on with it. I don't know what they gain. And it makes them look really bad in the eyes of the public. And surely you would think that maybe some of their fan base would be turned off a little bit because of that. You made the point, said you weren't complaining, Shane, when you were in contention in round 1 and round 2. And boy, wasn't he playing some brilliant golf. He really was. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant golf. And they would have all known that Saturday was going to be brutal. It was going to be tough. The conditions, the forecast, you can look at it. Okay, you could turn around and say, well, the organisers knew that those weather conditions were coming in. But it's the same for everybody. You've got to play to the same and not to move the tee boxes and make it easier for people to reach greens and stuff. It's a war of attrition out there, and you've got to play it as it is. He didn't on the Saturday, and that's where he lost the tournament. As for Tyrrell Hatton, I mean, seriously, it's that guy is just, it's becoming tiresome. It really is.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. He's a great golfer. But too many times now he plays up to this angry man, and the video that was done. That's very funny, the video that he's done, but you don't have to play up to it every single time, right? You don't have to act. No actor plays the villain in every single film. Just go out, play your golf, and I'm sure you'll win a lot more tournaments if you let your golf do the talking. Lowry was having a moan at people, moaning at a fan because, I don't know why I'm pointing over there because he's not even over there. But Lowry was pointing at a fan, or having a go at a fan, for finding his ball when he said, no, it's lost. Don't worry, I don't want to play.
At the 11th. Oh, yeah. Seriously. I mean, that 11th screwed him over more than a Shoreditch hooker. I mean, it really did. It was...
Clerkenwell Road. But then he didn't moan at the fan, which managed to kick his ball back into play when it was about to go in the goals. They are the breaks, right? It is what it is, for want of a better phrase. And I'm fed up with it, and we need to hear less of it, okay? If you want the game to come together, as everyone keeps on saying, don't try and rip it apart with your patheticness, all right? You're a pro golfer. You played really well. You pocketed loads of money. Everybody would love to be in your position. Yes, we all get angry on the golf course at bad shots, but don't moan about a setup when you know what it's going to be.
No, exactly. We are seeing it more and more often, and it is a little bit off-putting, as we say. I think we've given a few numbers in there in terms of like the stat position. Absolutely, there was a few things that I wanted to give out. For the people that are not that way inclined and maybe listen to the podcast. But there were some other great performances as well. It was good to see John Rahm featuring up there. I think again he finished 1 under for the tournament, and he was the best live player in the field. And let's be honest, there was some abject performances from a lot of live players last week. But again, Adam Scott performed really strongly, followed up the prior week's performance at the Genesis really, really well. Matthew Jordan, again, obviously grew up playing links golf at Royal Liverpool, as we know, had a really, really good tournament. 4 rounds of 71, believe it or not, for Matthew Jordan. You've already called out Dan Brown as well. He was playing in that group with Matty Dodberry, and also Catlin, the player that's getting a bit of live exposure at the moment. John Catlin up there, tied 16th for him. Just some really good names on the leaderboard. But yeah, Tristan Lawrence, you thought after that front 9 he was gonna at least be in a playoff, but Xander just put that foot on the gas and went into a different gear altogether. It was just, I'd like to get it back. I might watch a rerun of it tomorrow or something.
Well, we've got to wait for the next Open. It's going to be at Portrush. Can Xander do what Harman couldn't this year and defend the claret jug? Or will Lowry prove that he is the king of Portrush? And I think, have you got anything else to say about the Open before we move on?
No, I think as a recap, that's about enough. I think it's probably good that we maybe segue right into our status. We dipped away from it last week in terms of, everybody listens to this knows that we like a bit of a punt. And I'm going to give you our status through last week, given that obviously I had the winner in Xander Schauffele. I also got some place return with Shane Lowry as well. But from 409 selections that we've had in 2024, bro, we have had 15 outright wins and 18 places and a return on investment of just under 25%. And in golf terms, that is pretty strong. So come join us, come follow us, spread the word, listen to the Bros and Birdies picks that we give each week. And you never know, you might get a bit of a return.
You'll never walk alone. Hey, right, join us in part 2. You can find us part 2 just below YouTube. Or if you listen to us on a podcast, we'll be right back with you with the previews for this week's tournament.